Well, good morning. How are you all today? And welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I am Steve Smith. I want to talk about living rough, wilderness living after SHTF. A lot of people think about that, and I'm not sure that they think about the realities of it. And so I want to talk about that. Before we get started with that, I want to say I made a mistake yesterday. I made a video that was only supposed to go up on Patreon, and because of a mistake on our end, it also was allowed to go up on YouTube. And it was it was me answering a question from a viewer, Laura, about were there any books or lists of books in containing lists that I would recommend, and a couple of other things. That's not usually something that I answer on YouTube, simply because it invites many people to comment, and many of them are great, and sadly some of them are not, and they can mislead people. And I take my responsibility here seriously to pass on information that I know to be right. That's why I don't allow comments. That's why I don't allow links in the comments down there, because there's just too many people out there. To be honest, it's sad to say there's a lot of people out there in the preparedness world that don't know exactly what they're talking about, right? And a matter of fact, that brings us to the point. I just put one up today, just before I'm shooting this, on the Patreon channel, and it's about the coming total eclipses, the X's, and some solar flare activity coming up, and then something with the IRS that anybody with a business needs to be concerned about. But I put it up over there, and this was information. The reason that I did is because I got the information from a couple of our patrons over there who are very smart people, who I know personally, very smart people. They send me the information, and I've heard a lot about this eclipse coming up. We're going down to southern Missouri to watch it. But also, I see on other channels they haven't really known exactly. They're shooting a lot of fear out there, but they don't know exactly. They don't have all of the facts. That's why I don't put that stuff on YouTube, because I don't want. I want people to be able to come to this channel and say what I'm getting here is right. It's not just a bunch of people spouting off opinions that they can't back up. Okay, so that's why I'm going to leave that one that I did about books and lists and things like that. I'm going to leave it up here on YouTube, since it was already up, and so there you have it. Now I want to talk about wilderness living before we continue on this. To upset the person who just can't stand the fact that I wrote a bunch of books and want to sell them. To let you know that this and all of my videos are brought to you by my books, the Stonemont series, The Reversion, the Revival, the Renewal, and Appeal to Heaven, the Blessings of Freedom, and Hostages to Fortune. Yes, I'm working on number 7. I'm thinking it may be done within the next month. We will see. The Stonemont series, the complete books, the complete plan for preparing for, surviving, and rebuilding after a total collapse of everything. They're available either through Amazon. The link is down below. On Amazon, you get them in paperback, Kindle, or Audible. And the Audibles are just selling like crazy. I didn't realize. I'd had people ask me for years, when are you going to put them on Audible? And I just never got around to it. But I didn't realize how many people love Audible, because they would like to listen to the books while they're doing other things or driving or whatever. And it's just turned out to be a great thing. You can also get them in paperback directly from me, which I love, and you can get them through our website, stonemont.us. That link is also down below, and I get to sign them for you when you do that. Matter of fact, I'm going to spend a lot of this afternoon signing books of orders that have come in the last week or so, and just go down there, and there's a place for you to put, would you like Steve to sign your books, or whatever. Somebody just said, I've bought 12 complete sets of these to give friends. Wow. Now, most of you aren't going to buy 12 complete, but what a great way to promote preparedness, isn't it? This is a person who really he's done the job. He has gone out there and he has spread the word. And I'll tell you what, I wrote them to help people, and he is sending them out to help people. And there's a lot of people out there. You'll enjoy the story, number one, but you will learn so much. So that's our sponsor, as always. Again, the links are down below, either through Amazon, you'll get them quick, or from me directly, you'll get them signed. And I love doing that because I love my relationship with my readers. And you know, when I look at the orders, I'll look and I'll say, well, I like to see where you live, you know, what part of the country, and I find it a fascinating mix of how many people live in cities versus rural areas, and all of it is it's just I love it. I love it. Best thing I ever started doing was starting to write books. First one came out in 2017, and I still love doing it. Okay, wilderness living. There is this idea, and I want to address a truth or some truths about wilderness living. Because yesterday, on yesterday's, I'm not going to hold them up again because they're over on my bookshelf. But I suggested a number of books for those wanting to really take their preparedness to a next level. And I say, you know, I don't suggest preparing off of lists, but preparing off of life. Take a look at your life and imagine, what if everything fell apart? What would you need in order to continue living a good life, a high quality life? Now, sadly, there's too many people in the preparedness world who kind of have predestined themselves to live horrible lives. They look at preparedness as being able to do with very little. And while you should be able to do that, why would you want to? That's my question. Why would you want to? Why would you, you know, we work in order to get certain comforts and conveniences in our lives. That's been the story of the development of humankind for thousands of years. You know, continual forward progress, right? Yeah, people lived without indoor plumbing for the majority of human history. Why would you want to if you don't have to? You know, I mean, again, you should be able to if you have to, but why would you want to if you don't have to? People live for a long time without electricity, but doesn't it make it a lot easier? Yes, it does. People lived without TV, and I know that there's this large segment in the preparedness world that you know, talks about, oh, you know, technology is the end of the world and this and that. You know, I'm not going to argue with that. I think there's a lot of horrible things about the way technology is going. I think that AI is a danger. I think that robotics is a danger. I think all these things are a danger. I think that nanotechnology can be a big danger. It can be a help. It can also be a danger. Is it going to bring about the end of humankind? I don't know. I don't know, and neither does anybody else. People can be afraid of it, or they can embrace it to the extent that they believe it will help them in their daily lives. And where good stops and bad starts, boy, who knows? You know, there were those who were saying years ago that the bad started back in TV, and then those that said it all started in radio. Others said that it started with the telephones, and others with the telegraph. You know, so we're on a you know, a double helix spiral. Some say it's a downward spiral. Some say it's a upward spiral. I'll leave it to you to decide what's right for you. But I want to talk about this idea of wilderness survival. You know, the potential of wilderness survival. And some of the books that I suggested that I held up, and if you haven't seen it, you can watch that one yesterday. Several of them were, well, my books, of course, I suggested. But that's not wilderness survival. The Foxfire books were one that I put up. The Encyclopedia of Country Living was another that I put up. These are books about how to live rough, about how to live with nothing. Now, I know a bit about living rough. I know quite a bit about living rough, to be honest. And I know a little bit about living with next to nothing. Quite a bit about that. I can do it. I prefer not to. You know. But if the time came, I have prepared now to the point to where I would not have to go back and live as horribly as I once did. And something just flew through my head. I'll try to get back to that if I remember it. I knew a woman. I didn't know her. I knew of her. I saw her a couple of times. Back in the 50s, back until the 1870s, my family owned a bunch of farms in central Missouri, south central Missouri. And it was rough. I mean, pretty much everything, only thing that grew well down there were rocks and thorn trees and snakes. And chiggers and ticks, right? Those of you who know the Ozarks know chiggers and ticks. Oh, you can also get the mugs on our website. This is one of the biggest sellers now. The only commie idea that liberals hate. The crossed AKs. And way back in the woods from my granddad's, I mean, once you got 100 yards from the house, you were in it, man. Unless you knew your way back out of the woods, you were in it. Well, way back in the woods, there was an old woman. I don't know if anybody ever knew her name. She had been living back in there forever. And we only just knew her as the old woman. And my granddad would say that sometimes he'd in the dark late at night, he'd hear her screaming. And my uncle, my great uncle, who also lived in the farm next door, always accused her of being a witch. I don't know. You know, they might have been hearing a mountain lion, a cougar. Because cougars, if you ever heard one of those at night, it sounds like a woman screaming. But she lived way back in there. And she lived in a log cabin that had been built in the 18 whatevers. I mean, it was not well. I mean, it was built, okay for that time. But I mean, the logs were not fitted. It was really rough. And she lived down there just in there was no water. She got her water from a creek or a crick, as we say down there. She had about 6 cows, 6 black cows. And she lived in kind of whenever she wanted to come, I don't know why she wanted to come up out of the woods, but occasionally she did. She'd come up walking through the woods to my granddad's place, and I don't know, to get something or whatever. Anyway, her property, and I don't know if she owned it or if that she had just been living there forever. I don't know. It was weird. But she had lived there forever. And I saw her one time. We went down there, my dad and brother and sister and I were down there walking through the woods, and we came up and he says, "Whoa," he says, "I think this is the old woman's cabin." It had burned. She had accused my great uncle of burning it. He didn't. But it had caught on fire. And now realize, here was a woman who never went to town. She lived completely out there in the woods. She ate the stuff that she picked or caught in the woods. She had some cows, so I guess she had some milk. She did her business wherever she did her business. She, made fires with flint and steel. You can't get much rougher than the way this woman lived. And so anyway, we came upon this, we saw this cabin, dilapidated, fallen down. It hadn't burned completely, but it was only a couple of walls with some stuff falling over it that was still standing. She was still living in it, because that's just what she did, right? And so we looked around and we started walking a little closer to it, and all of a sudden she appeared out of it. It was like a ghost. And she appeared out of the woods in front of us. And I don't remember how the conversation went, but it wasn't all that friendly. And, my dad was nice. He was always polite, but she was very, very, she's paranoid. Here's people that I don't know coming out, and all of a sudden something spooked her cows. And it could have been us. I don't know. Maybe they weren't used to seeing anybody but her. And because, this was way back in the woods where things happen you never hear about. And they started taking off, And the memory, the biggest memory we have, my brother and sister and I, of that was she started trying to chase him, screaming, "Babies, my babies, my babies." Okay, the reason that I tell you this story is because she was living rough. If everything falls apart, like in, the possibilities of what happens with my books, a lot of people have this idea, and I don't think it's a fully formed idea. And so that's what I'm warning about. This idea of running and living in the woods. And they've got their bug out bags, and they've got all the stuff that they've seen people advertise on their YouTube channels. And then I guess, are there still preparedness sites, message boards and things? I never went to them. Years ago, when I put out my first book, I went to a couple of them, and I thought, this is not for me. But the things that people see, okay, this will let you live in the woods. And so they get all their stuff, and they have this idea that they're going to be able to live in the woods. And it's a fantasy for the vast majority of people. I would bet not 2% of the people in today's world could survive living in the wilderness without taking a whole lot of their modern conveniences with them. And then they're still going to be dead within a year because all sorts of things. Bad water, injuries, accidents, getting sick from stuff you don't know. You eat the wrong thing, running out of food, because it is, to live in the wilderness. You know how much food you're going to have out in the wilderness? That means you had to take it out there. Either you had to pre-position it, cache it, or you're taking it with you in your trailer or your truck or whatever, and you're going out and living in the wilderness. And most people are not going to go and don't have the ability to go deep into the wilderness, deep enough into the wilderness to where they're not going to have to worry about a whole lot of other people who may be coming out there. Now, I am not one of those who has ever particularly ascribed to this idea of the golden hordes. The city people are not going out there in mass numbers because that's where the food is. The people who still think that don't know city people. Okay. So that's really not going to be a problem. There are going to be some problems of those people coming to the small towns. It's the small towns where the problem really it could be, and we don't have any idea. Because to be honest, and I've talked about this before, in a metropolitan area, you have the city, and then you have all the outer rings around that real city, the city central, that people outside can think is the city, is not the city. But those different rings of suburbs, and the truly dangerous animalistic people are never going to get through the suburbs. They'll be killed before they get out, because there will be fighting as they try to get out, and the suburban people will fight against them, and they'll kill most of them, because suburban people are smart and well armed, and they're not just going to let people come out. Once there's no law, you see, suburban people tend to be rule followers. And, that makes it sound bad. Yeah, to an extent, rule followers, but law abiding. And they are kept under control by our current laws. When there's no more laws, hey, thugs coming out of the city ain't going to last long. Now, but the more law-abiding people are not going to go en masse and try to invade and take away from. They'll starve to death before they will start killing people. To be honest, to be real honest, and there will be those, especially here on, this also goes on Patreon, but especially on YouTube, will say, yeah, people become animals. You don't realize how animalistic people become when they don't have any food for them or their kids. And yes, I do. Yes, I do. I wrote a bunch of books about it, and I've been doing this for 50 years. And I know probably more, well, I know how animalistic people can be. Take my word for it or don't, I don't care. But most people are not going to go out and try to ravage the countryside. So this is what I want to say. You need a plan that's different than living in the wilderness. Okay? Most people are not going to be able to do it. Most people don't have any idea how rough it is to really live rough. Most of them wouldn't make it. And most of them, wouldn't want to. If you can do anything other than that, you should want to do anything other than that, right? Yeah. So what I want to say here, my main thing was to dispel this idea of living in the wilderness. Live like I have talked, or prepare, let me put it this way, prepare to live the way that I described in my books. You want to be not in a highly populated place, unless that's what, now I still do, but I have a place to go. I have alternative locations, okay? I don't call them bug out locations. I call them alternative locations that I can go to if I need to, and they'll be just fine. But prepare. If you've read my books, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I'd suggest you do. Should I hold them up one more time? No, I'll hold them up again, just a reminder. Don't live in a densely populated area, but live in an area that you're still able to acquire, a lot of resources, and then develop those resources. And you should either live in or be able to get to quickly a location just a little ways out of the densely populated areas, okay, where you're still going to be able to build community, whether you're going to be able to bring together your groups that you have formed before it happened, or whether, as in my books, you're there and can help people. The story of my books, they're novels, in which I hide all of the preparedness lessons. It's a story about a family who was prepared, and as a result of their preparedness, they were able to not just survive a cataclysmic collapse of everything, but continue to live very well. And also as a result, they were able to help other people, and from there, the building of community. Think about it that way. So I would suggest stay away from this thought process that, oh boy, we're going back to the Stone Age. That's another thing that I hate to hear on other channels. We're not going back to the Stone Age. We're going back to, if this happens, to a pre-electricity day. And people lived very well before electricity. Okay, you're talking 1840s. 1850s for a lot. Hey, when did Appalachia get electricity? It wasn't until the 1950s, right? People, well, they didn't live really well. If you want to see how hard life is, living rough, look at the Foxfire books and take a look at those people. It takes a toll. Those people look like they're 90 when they're 50. Okay, it is not a nice life. It is not a life you should want to live. But do it the way that I talk about in my books. Prepare yourself to be able to continue to live with a certain number of convenience. Don't be afraid. You're not going back to the Stone Age. There's not going to be woolly mammoths running around. If you've prepared properly, you will be able to continue to live a very high quality lifestyle, and in many cases much higher quality than you live now. A lot of people, how am I doing on time? Okay, I better bring this to a close. A lot of people, when they read my books, they say, man, I'd rather live in here than in the world I live in today, and I agree. When I'm writing, I enjoy, and when I reread my books, I enjoy. I said, man, that'd be such a great life compared to what's going on in our world today. So think about that. Don't think about living in the wilderness, living rough, out of a bag, and then thinking that you're going to somehow build something from the nothing that surrounds you, because it's not going to happen. Think about preparing well, because this is what we say. we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. The converse of that would be we prepare rough today so that we can live rough tomorrow. I don't know about you, but that is not my desire. Okay? Prepare well. And if you want to, again, I'll remind you, the Stonemont series, my books, yes, they are. And you want to see how to prepare well? It's all in here, and you will love the story. So, if you aren't with us on Patreon, love to have you. The link is down below. Like I said, I put up a bunch of stuff over there I never put up on YouTube. You'll like it. You'll get a lot out of it, and that's our purpose. The links for everything else is down below. Think about what I said. Think about what kind of life you would want to live. Not what you can live, not just surviving. What kind of life do you want to live if everything falls apart? And then prepare for that, because that should be your goal. Okay, you all have a good day. Let me know what you're doing about this. Love to read your comments, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.